like no other. But then I can't, if I'm being honest. Yes, I'm still in shock at the institutional failures of security, of protocol, and of standards that we saw happen on Wednesday when hundreds of rioters enthralled to President Trump violated what's supposed to be the people's house, our U.S. Capitol. Did it in a way that no one in more than 2 centuries ever has. Because in their collective minds, they alone had a right to. And that would be because the president verbally deputized them. Then he went home. And because of Republicans in Congress held them up as persecuted patriots. That is, of course, until they were the ones cowering in fear of the mob. But for Black Americans, that mob has ruled far longer than this nation has ever cared to admit, often with the tacit, if not explicit, cooperation of our law enforcement and our lawmakers. So, of course, one thing after the efforts of thousands of Black and organizers and police sent a son of a Jewish immigrant and a Black minister to the new Senate from the South. 4 years of incitement, exactly as so many people of color, myself included, said it in violence. And only after that violence did something unprecedented happen. Last night, Twitter announced saying that the president was permanently banned from the platform, citing the risk of incitement of violence. And now this president, the man he breathes, at the very last minute. But it should go without saying that throughout tonight's show, my biggest symbolic target will be the double standard of justice that we saw this week in Washington. MAGA rioters, among them terrorist bombers, and members of a violent mob treated with kid gloves and photo ops by law enforcement. But throughout 2020, anti-racism protesters, like the thousands I helped assemble over this summer in Washington, were met with military force. And as we all saw on video, directions to the pavement or to the police lane. And I want to begin tonight by pointing out that combating police bias is not a call to shoot the MAGA rioters, but rather a call not to shoot at Black Lives Matter or civil rights protesters. And as Republican lawmakers now know what it is to be outnumbered, to have the pitchforks pointed in their direction, I take only this shot, which is that tonight, some of them now know what it is to be a minority. And so we start tonight with the new incoming chair of Homeland Security Committee, Senator Gary Peters of Michigan. Senator, thank you for joining us. First, let me ask you this. The President's acting Attorney General said this week that those rioters that breached the Capitol building would, quote, face the full consequences of their actions under the law. Now, under the executive order the President passed last summer, ironically enough to protect Confederate monuments in part, the maximum consequences would be up to 10 years in prison for violating federal property. As the incoming head of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, what are you calling for as far as punishment? How should these rioters be handled by the criminal justice system?
Well, there's no question, Arbitrator, that they need to be charged and convicted, and the full weight of the law needs to be put against them. But this is simply unacceptable. And what we saw, it's unconscionable that we have this violent attack on the very citadel of our democracy. And I think I speak for most Americans that were glued to the television set to see what was happening. And all of the people who I've talked to since then have told me they saw an attack on America itself with this action. This was not just an attack on the men and women who work in the Capitol, but folks all across the country felt it was a personal attack on them. Individuals that engaged in this violence need to be charged, they need to be convicted, they need to be sentenced. And I'll tell you one thing, as I launch an investigation, we're going to do a comprehensive types of investigation through the Homeland Security Department to find out how this security breach occurred. What do we need to do to make sure it never happens again and must never happen again? But one thing that I think is particularly striking is the low number of arrests. Here you have videos of folks engaged in criminal behavior, and the number of arrests is very small. That's unacceptable. You need to let folks know if they engage in this kind of behavior, they will be caught, they will be charged, and they will pay a price.
Now, in your capacity as incoming chair of Homeland Security Committee, will you also find out what the Homeland Security Department did leading up to this? Because later in the show we're going to extensive things we have to do, having nonviolent marches in Washington, including last year. And we had to go through with the Homeland Security before we could even get a permit. Was there the same kind of real stringent analysis, layouts, and pre-march, pre-rally, pre-gathering that this would have to go? Because there are also reports that an arm of the Republican Attorney General's Association sent out robocalls encouraging people to march on the U.S. Capitol the day before the riot. Now, how stunning is that? And should these people also be looked into and properly disbarred?
Well, I think we have to do a comprehensive investigation. You mentioned about the permits early. That has to be part of it. The Capitol Police and their activities will be looked at. And, I think it's safe to say that there was a massive failure on the part of the leadership of Capitol Police. And, the men and women who are out there trying to defend folks in the Capitol, the rank and file certainly were working hard, did their job, and unfortunately one of them died as a result of that, and our family, or certainly our prayers and thoughts go to that family. But leadership failed miserably. Why were they not prepared? The lack of intelligence to understand what is happening here. When the internet traffic was so clear that there was going to be a large number of folks, a mob gathering at the Capitol, and the types of discussions that were occurring online were that there was going to be violence. The Capitol Police should have been prepared, and they should have worked more closely with the Department of Homeland Security to make sure you had surge forces, the Federal Protective Service, Secret Service, CBP officers, the National Guard.
They want to saying, bring your guns, bring weapons on the internet. This was, you don't need a undercover operation. They said it on the internet. Did you know you were getting mobbed? The president announced he was going. The president announced the rally. This was no surprise gathering.
No, absolutely, and that's what makes it even more outrageous, is that you didn't have to have any sophisticated intelligence. It was so widely out there. And as you mentioned, we had the President of the United States himself tweeting saying, come to the Capitol. It's going to be wild. That it was clear that something big was going to happen. And the fact you didn't have enough manpower from the Capitol Police. You showed an image earlier of folks who were in riot gear. We didn't see folks in riot gear. They weren't even equipped properly to push back against this kind of insurgence against the Capitol. There are lots of questions. We are going to demand answers because, again, this is simply unacceptable in this country. This must never happen again. And we have to send a strong signal to those folks who are engaged in this action that they will be sought out, they will be punished, and anyone else who tries to do this in the future is going to certainly face a very different result than what we saw this last week.
Now, looking forward, ABC is reporting that the right-wing extremists are vowing to return to Washington for Joe Biden's inauguration. One of their leaders said, quote, we will come in numbers that no standing army or police agency can match. Your reaction to that?
Well, our reaction, we have to take that very seriously. We cannot make any mistakes coming up this inauguration. We have to have the peaceful, smooth transition of power, which is a cornerstone of our democracy, and it needs to go forward safely. And we need to make sure that we have adequate preparations. I can tell you we're going to be asking an awful lot of questions from the security folks prior to the election, demanding an answer. My entire caucus, the Democratic caucus, is fully engaged in this to make sure that we get those answers, because we need to make sure that everyone is protected and that this fundamental aspect of our country, where we pass power peacefully to the incoming President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris. This should be a celebration of this democracy, and we've got to make sure that it goes forward smoothly, and we are prepared for whatever may come next.
All right, thank you, Senator Gary Peters. Joining me now is Congressman Hank Johnson, Democrat of Georgia, and member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, before I go to the Judiciary Committee and the President's incitement of a riot on Wednesday, it overshadowed the incredible wins in your home state of Georgia on Tuesday. What does it say about Georgia that it will send its first black senator and first Jewish senator to Washington? When I think of in the South, blacks and Jews marched together and died together for the right to vote. It comes to mind easily Goodman, Cheney, and Swinger among the martyrs that did that, blacks and Jews together. And now we see a black and a Jew going to Washington from Georgia. What does it say about your home state?
Yeah, it says that the nation has made a lot of progress. It shows that Georgia and the South have made progress. But the announced victory is coming on Wednesday, the 6th, the same day we had a attempted coup in this country. Shows us just how far we have to go in this country to achieve the kind of values and vision that the framers of the Constitution envisioned for the country. We can't forget that this country was born in racism. Racism is in the soil of this country. And what sprouted out on Wednesday, on one hand, you had this, the results of the Tuesday election, where we've got 2 new United States senators who have enabled Democrats to control the Senate so that we can start enacting some of the agenda of the Biden-Harris administration, and that's going to be great for the nation. But ominously, there still in the soil of this nation arises the fruit of racism. It displayed itself in the policing that went on at the Capitol. I have no problem with the rank and file police officers who were undermanned and didn't have the proper equipment. Somebody had put them in an untenable situation, and so they reacted in the only way that they could, but they were met by an overwhelming mob that was sent there, and they were set up the same way that we in Congress were set up. We didn't know until the last minute that we were in danger. It was too late for us to take any action to protect ourselves. And for a while, we were at the mercy of this mob that came with zip ties and hangman's nooses, and it set up a gallows on the Capitol grounds, Reverend Al.
They set up gallows. Let me push on that. They set up gallows on the Capitol ground, had nooses, had Confederate flags in the Capitol building.
This is nothing but a race war that was about to be unleashed. And had it not been for the one shot fired by that plainclothes officer in the Speaker's lobby, right behind the House gallery, right there, if those people had been able to get through, they would have had us who were in the gallery up on the 3rd floor trapped. We would not have been able to get out. And right now, when they finally got us out of there, we walked past spread-eagled rioters on the floor at gunpoint by the Capitol Hill police officers. As we went down the steps, they had us surrounded up on the 3rd floor. And that police officer had not fired and stopped the onslaught on the speakers in the Speaker's lobby. They would have cut off our escape route. They would have had us upstairs. And I have no doubt that some of us who look like me would have been hanging from the railings of the 3rd floor onto the House floor, swinging like fruit strange fruit we would have been swinging from those railings. And I tell you, that's what close it came.
How many members of Congress were there pinned in that third floor that only that gunshot by the plainclothesman stopped that mob from coming through that door and getting to you? How many members of Congress were there?
I would say somewhere between 30 and 40. They could have had their pick of who they wanted to make an example of. And they came to the Capitol to do business. And the business that they were about was to lynch some people. They talk about Mike Pence, they talk about Nancy Pelosi, but you and I know, Reverend Al, that one of us would have been hanging with them. And it's really
clearly you don't bring a noose and weapons if you didn't mean business. Let me ask you something. Do you think those GOP members who supported the rioters should be expelled from Congress?
I do, Reverend Al. Representative Mo Brooks from Alabama, the Old South, Old Alabama, George Wallace, Alabama, was up there on the at the White House on January 6th, edging and egging these demonstrators towards the Capitol Hill that he does his work in. And he was there when they got there. And there's no telling, Reverend Al, what kind of collusion and communication were going on between the leadership of the MAGA, the Trump administration, and the defense apparatus that they control, and the intelligence apparatus that they control, and the Capitol Hill Police Department at the highest levels, the Sergeant at Arms at the highest level. They saw all of these people advancing to the Capitol. They saw them crash through the barriers, the ground. They let them get to the Capitol grounds, the marble of the Capitol that got them. They saw them walk up the stairs. They allowed them to come inside the door, and nobody warned us. Was in the House chamber doing the business of Congress like sitting ducks. It reminds me of that situation in Alabama that John Lewis used to talk about, where one night after the NAACP and the others had been meeting, the NCLC meeting to plan something. It was nighttime, and the police cut the lights off and let the vigilantes come in, and they themselves took part in it as well. And as a result, that young man, I think his name was Jimmy Lee Jackson, or I don't recall it. That's what Jimmy Lee Jackson. That's right. He was killed trying to defend his mother and father. And so that's the situation that occurred on Wednesday, January 6th, in the Congress of the United States of America. It was born of racism. That whole Donald Trump, make America great again, that's racism. Make America, put America back to where it used to be, and put these people in their place, and keep and maintain our lawful place and rightful place. That's what that riot was all about.
I'm glad to leave it there, but you certainly enlightened our viewers and brought us in that room where you and other members of Congress were basically at the mercy of a mob. Had there not been one shot fired, it might have ended up even more tragic, and 5 people did lose their lives. Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson, thank you for being here. Coming up, Trump's final failure. His supporters got caught up in mob mentality, and now the president's crimes are starting to catch up with him. But first, my colleague, what you doing? Senator in Washington. And even to the extent that Republican incumbents, there were flawed candidates. Well, they seem to be flawed exactly in your image, Mr. President, with allegations of shady financial dealings like insider trading and their racist Photoshop campaign ads. They really took your embrace of lawlessness and white supremacy to heart. But I don't want to give you too much credit, Mr. President. You're less of a cause of American white supremacy and more of a symptom of it. Because your conduct has given the seedy, racist underbelly of this country permission to slither out of the rock it's been hiding under.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. By the way, this disease, without question, has more names than any disease. I can name Kung Fu. I can name 19 different versions. Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
In the final year of your term, you retweeted a video of one of your supporters shouting white power and defended the alleged Kenosha, Wisconsin shooter who is accused of killing 2 peaceful racial justice protesters in cold blood. And this week, you directed your followers to the United States Capitol.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness.
You spread your lies about the election you lost, commanding your mom to the Capitol, and admonished them against weakness. But what would you, Donald J. Trump, know about strength? You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and have spent every day of your pathetic life whining that it wasn't gold. Your toxic sense of entitlement allowed you to fail upwards for decades. And the deep rot of white supremacy still festering in the roots of this country ensured that millions of Americans would cast their ballots for your brand of racist grievance. But you lost. You lost a coalition led by millions of people of color showing you the door on election day, and your base just couldn't handle that. So a couple of thousand of them took you at your word. They took their tantrum to the Capitol, destroying federal public property, threatening government officials, and tearing at the very fabric of American democracy, leading to the deaths of 5 people that we know of, all while you sat safely in the people's house, watching your mercenaries on television and telling them how, quote, very special they were, and that you loved them. And you know what, Mr. President? I believe you do. Because those rioters were reflecting your own poisonous narcissism right back at you. Of course, you loved it. The destruction and lawlessness at the Capitol represent the very essence of your fair leadership. And it is you who must be held accountable. We'll be right back.
Lifetime warranty and free shipping.
And Breonna Taylor's shooting death were fired from the city's police force after nearly a year of constant community protests. In Kenosha, Wisconsin, protesters were back in the street after no charges were filed against the officer who shot Jacob Blake in the back 7 times, paralyzing him for life. And in Columbus, Ohio, I joined the family of Andre Hill earlier this week as they laid him to rest, awaiting the investigations promised by the city's police chief into why the officers at the scene of Hill's death turned off their body cameras as Hill's body laid in a cold garage. Joining me now is civil rights attorney, I call him the Attorney General of Black America, Benjamin Crump. Mr. Crump, you were involved in all 3 of these cases, all 3 occurring this week. The firing of the police officers in Louisville, the no charges in the case in Kenosha, Wisconsin of Jacob Blake, and the case involving Andre Hill, where I did the eulogy at his funeral this week, and you spoke. give us quickly the status as the attorney for all three families of these cases this week.
Thank you, Reverend Al, for having me and also for continuing to bring attention to these tragedies where in each of these cases, unarmed black men and women were shot by the police. In Breonna Taylor's case, we are somewhat gratified that the officers will be fired, the one who lied on the probable cause affidavit to get the judge to sign the no-knock warrant in the first place was terminated, but the tragedy there is still no one to this day has been charged for killing Breonna Taylor, not one of those police officers. And then equally tragic, right before the announcement of, right before what happened in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, Jacob Blake Jr., who was shot in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 7 times in the back. The district attorney said that the police officer was justified, Reverend Al, because of self-defense. And it's just shocking that a black man running away from the police, you find a threat to say you can shoot him, but white people running towards the police, threatening with violence, like we saw in Washington, D.C., storming the Capitol building, you don't see that as a threat. And then Andre Hill, holding a cell phone, Reverend Al, as you preach his eulogy so masterfully to give that family peace, but to give us a cause to action where you say no more excuses. Why is it we offer excuses where police try to justify unjustifiable actions that kill us? They have these imaginary fears when black people have cell phones, but you have real threats like we saw in Washington, D.C., like we saw in Kenosha with Kyle Rittenhouse, and you don't shoot them, you de-escalate. So no more can they ever say they don't know how to de-escalate, Reverend Al. No more, because we have a prima facie evidence from Washington, D.C. on January 6th forever to demonstrate there are two justice systems in America, how they govern America when it's black people and when it's white people.
Now, we saw now that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, President-elect and Vice President-elect, respectively, won the election. Now the Senate is, now Democrats have control of the Senate with a tie vote by Vice President-elect Kamala Harris when she takes office. And we saw this week that President-elect Biden nominated Judge Garland to be the Attorney General, and also 3 senior Justice Department officials, 2 of whom we know well, Vita Gupta and also Christian Clark. Will you, do you feel that the federal government will step in more and the Justice Department reinvigorate the Civil Rights Division to deal with some of these cases that local prosecutors, like the one in Kenosha, seem not to really put the kind of effort that we need? You and I both had said we preferred a black attorney general. We didn't get that, but he has a good staff, and I'm sure we are going to be holding Judge Garland accountable and in dialogue. But do you think under this new administration that people voted for in such overwhelming numbers that they will deal with the George Floyd Policing and Justice Act, and they will deal with policing as was on the course in the Obama administration?
Reverend, it is my belief, and you and I have a chance to talk with the Vice President in New York, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who renewed her commitment to deal with these social justice issues in the Biden-Harris administration. I pray that Judge Garland will be steadfast in championing civil rights after 4 years of an outright assault on the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice. We cannot have somebody practicing on the job. We can not have somebody who's timid, because our children are dying. Our people are being killed unnecessarily, and we have to hope that the Department of Justice will give justice to an innocent black woman in Breonna Taylor. Will give justice for this unjustifiable shooting of Jacob Blake Jr. that we all saw with our eyes. You've talked to his father and mother, Reverend Al. You know these people are good people, and all we want for our children is what any of our white brothers and sisters want for their children, and that is for them to have life and liberty and a chance at the American dream. So we now have to turn to the Department of Justice and Joe Biden. We gave you the House of Representatives, where Georgia and Stacey Abrams, black people, gave you the Senate, and we have delivered the White House to you. Now we ask that you deliver to us an America that we can say our children have an equal opportunity at justice and the dream that everybody holds as the beacon of hope.
Benjamin Crump, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us again tonight. There were many troubling things about the shocking events that unfolded in our nation's capital on Wednesday. But one that continues to stand out to me has to do with the tepid response of security forces to the invasion, looting and ransacking of a building considered to be the heart of our democracy. It's impossible not to see the contrast between the treatment of that angry mob and the response to peaceful protesters like the ones in this video of Black Lives Matter demonstrations in June, just one of the many that swept the country this summer. Back in August, I and Martin Luther King III led the National Action Network's Commitment March, Get Your Knee Off Our Neck, and the police presence at an approved public event with a crowd of unarmed people was way more rigorous and felt way more intense. So what gives? For joining me now is Democratic strategist and former chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, Maya Rocky Moore Cummings, and National Action Network's D.C. Bureau Chief, Ebony Riley. Ebony, let me go to you first. You organized, you were the point person that organized Man's March with me and Martin back in August. Now, remind me, because I don't think people understand just how tricky it was to organize a peaceful public rally with police cooperation, and why the lack of action on law enforcement's part on Wednesday is so shocking when you go through all of the procedures you had to go through to get permits for over 200,000 peaceful people to march, and not one incident happened, not one arrest. But the hurdles you had to jump. Give our viewers a sense of why I'm saying that there had to be somebody drop the ball or some kind of cooperation between some segments of law enforcement and government officials that had this happen.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for having me. When you are accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. How in the epicenter of freedom and the citadel of democracy can domestic terrorists gallivant around the U.S. Capitol complex unchecked and undeterred? How in 2021 are we seeing a Confederate flag being paraded through the rotunda? Look, as you mentioned, there were several steps that I took to make sure that our permit application was sound, and how we did meetings with National Park Service, for National Action Network to have approval from local and federal agencies we worked with on the Commitment March on Washington. We held over a dozen meetings with 26 different agency representatives. I created a 14.
You had to meet with 26 federal agencies over a dozen marches just to get the permit for a march.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Go ahead.
That's right. I created a 14-page site plan with area maps, stage and tech maps, and social distancing maps for every portion of the mall we would use. We needed a site mitigation plan for strict COVID-19 protocols that we put in place. We even set up COVID testing tents at entry points. We had an emergency plan, and someone had to serve as the main point of contact during the march that communicated with all federal agencies in the area required by permit. Why wasn't that mandated last week when COVID numbers were at an all-time high?
Now, when you hear this, and I'll come right back to it, when you hear all of these process, all of these procedures we had to go through, COVID protocol, or had to buy masks for 700,000 people, take temperatures, had to get all of this just to get a permit, had to have people at a point of contact protect the federal agencies throughout the march, had to give a route march that had to be approved by them to march as they had a march, we had a march. Why wasn't this required by those that did this on Wednesday? And if it was required, who did they give the permit to? The other thing that Ebony will tell you is we had to post an insurance bond worth millions of dollars. Well, who insured this disaster on Wednesday, Mike?
You know, that's a good question, Reverend. You know, what we saw on Wednesday was a lynch mob. They went into that Capitol and they were intent on capturing and they were intent on violence. And what we know is that the members of Congress are not safe. I have been all over that U.S. Capitol complex, and I've seen the police officers of the Capitol Police in action before, and they were absolutely not prepared for the riot mob that came on Wednesday. And these people, and many of them apparently, are members of police segments and the military. And so what we're having here is a situation that is a triple, I would say, national security threat. It seems that our U.S. police departments and certainly also our U.S. military segments may actually be infiltrated by these people who hold these anti-American values, anti-Constitution values. And whatever happened to Blue Lives Matters, because they were intent on also attacking those police officers as well. And so, you know, we need to get to the bottom of it, whether there was coordination. Certainly we know that these people were dangerous, and we knew it before they arrived.
Well, they announced it. They put it on the social media. So let me ask you this, Ebony, the fact that you had to go through all these hurdles, the fact that your staff had to be on call, the fact that we had to post all this insurance,